Good afternoon. It's Monday. It's 3 o'clock. Welcome to Together Unlocked, brought to you as always by Together 2012. We're an organisation led by disabled artists creating a Paralympic cultural legacy in the main London 2012 host borough of Newham. I'm Ju Gosling, also known as the artist Ju90. I'm artistic director of Together 2012, and with me in my East London studio, as she's been locked down for the last 6 months with me, is the artist, our chair, Julie Newman. I'm going to come back for a little bit of audio description in a minute, but first, at the other end of our long virtual wheeled sofa in the West Midlands, I will let the guys introduce themselves.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Robin Surgeonator. I am the business director at Together 2012, and in fact, an artist as well, working under the name of Angry Fish. As Ju said, I am at the very far end of our virtual sofa, our many wheeled virtual sofa, in fact. It'd be quite interesting to see if we could all move at the same time, wouldn't it? And what would happen? Anyway.
Backdrops would collapse.
Yeah, there would be studio disasters everywhere. So anyway, I will just give you a little description of myself. I am not very tall, actually. Got silvery hair. I am wearing no armed. No, I'm not. Actually, I'm wearing no rimmed.
No armed glasses.
Yeah, those ones
No,
that
The,
balance.
the double monocle.
Yeah. I'm giving up now. I'm not even describing my face, but however, I've really got a lovely body dressed in a black polo shirt with a logo over the left breast which says Swim Science.
Hi, I'm Josh Surgeonator. I'm also one of the hosts of Together Unlocked, and I'm a PhD student, and I'm slowly becoming more artistic. I'm getting kind of like second-hand artist skill, I think, from being around these three for the last few months. Um, I have ever longer blonde hair. At some point, I will have to go and get a haircut because it's getting to the point where I can't see, and I also can't eat without accidentally eating my own hair. Um, and then I've got no glasses or monocles or any sort of face seeing devices. Um, I'm also not very tall, but very importantly, I am slightly taller than Robin, and I'm wearing a bright red sports t-shirt.
And whilst you introduce yourselves and describe, I will both adjust the camera, which has gone weird again, and put the light on.
Yes, I try not to be distracted. In fact, I'm just going to put us onto the screen on our own for a minute. How lovely. So I'm Ju Gosling. I have short red hennaed hair in what we've described as a corona crop. That's what happens when you take the assistance dog's clippers to your own hair. Julie, of course, hasn't cut her hair at all, so she has the opposite problem, although not quite as bad as Josh yet. I have black plastic glasses, I have black wrist braces, silver jewellery, including a silver heart pendant, a silver coloured but not silver in fact bangle, and some still silver stud star earrings. And I have a purple t shirt on which says Mad Love. Behind us is you can see part of our graffiti banner, which says Together 2012, and also has, although you can't see all of them, pictures of all of the different arts activities that we cover during the year. So that includes drama, dance, carnival arts, street art, visual art, poetry, photography, filmmaking, and much, much more. And finally, behind us is a very small teddy who's taking part in our virtual bear hunt and clockwork Paralympics, but you'll have to watch on Wednesday for more details of that. Over to you, Julie.
Hi, I've got gold and silver hair. I've got dark rimmed glasses, and today I'm wearing a very dark green polo shirt. I've got a black smart type watch on one hand and silver bracelet on another, and silver jewelry around my neck.
Yes, I better not break it to you at this point as I bought it, and you're always so enthusiastic about it that it's actually pewter. But never mind, pewter is lovely too. So it's the 21st of September. Two very important things are happening today. The UN are either about to go into session or have gone into session virtually for the first time to celebrate their 75th anniversary, and all of their speeches are available online. If we get time, we might talk about why that's important. But it's also World Alzheimer's Day, isn't it, Julie?
It is. It's Alzheimer's Awareness Month around the world, but today is, I think it's the 8th National Awareness Day, and the theme, I think, for this year is to talk about it. So that's what we're doing.
Great. So you can hear us. We haven't been so far, but you can hear us continue to talk about Alzheimer's today, but also through the rest of the month. Coming up today at 3:15, we have our new regular Monday feature, Update. Update, we report on the pilot in Newham and the national launch on Thursday of the NHS COVID-19 app. So we'll come back to that. We're going to play you a film around 3:30 that will tell you much, much more about our Join In From Home programme. Our Join In From Home programme is all on our website. This live stream is part of it. So, again, we'll be telling you much more about that later. And then after 3:30, Julie has recorded an interview with the photographer Tim Boddy. Tim's work was featured on the BBC about 10 days ago, so we're going to be hearing much, much more about that. We always like to talk about photography and film on a Monday because, in more usual times, once a month on a Monday, we would be hosting a filmmakers club, and once a month, we would be hosting a dance filmmakers club. We can't do that at the moment, but we can talk about those subjects here. And finally, we have the second of our new regular Monday features, Relax with Arwa. Arwa is a young member of our associate drama company, Act Up Newham. She's just launched her own Relax with Arwa yoga channel, and we're going to have a nice wind down because, hey, it's Monday. Everybody needs one on Monday. But first, guys, how was the weekend? On a Friday, we have a regular feature, Something for the Weekend, where we recommend things to do online and offline. Did you do any of them or did you do something else?
Well, I kind of dropped in and out of watching bits of Le Mans. I wasn't committed enough to watch the whole 24 hours, but watched bits and pieces and really enjoyed it. Kind of seemed to always be watching the bits when there was action. So I don't know whether I timed it very well, or if it was just a fairly chaotic race, I guess. But that was good fun.
Yeah, myself, the weekend was slightly skewed, but unfortunately, Tracy, our back office production assistant, is not so well at the minute. So my focus was slightly less on relaxing. Although that being said, to keep her company, I took myself to lie down and read with her on Saturday afternoon and fell asleep. So wasn't so so was that wasn't so good from the story making perspective, but I certainly relaxed.
Well, that does sound good. We're very aware that we're shielding households, but we're lucky. It doesn't always feel lucky, but mostly it feels lucky that we're shielding with other people. I've been thinking about all of you out there on your own. If you haven't already, I think the idea of setting up some kind of support network, just have two or three of you because it's going to be a long winter. If you, as we say, stay home, stay creative, and stay well. But part of that is networking with people who really understand what you're going through. And I do think that's key. And for all of us who've got lots of disabled friends, there are also, we know, lots of people who don't know anybody else in the same situation or like Robin and ourselves, we're co-carers. I think so many of us at the moment are having to provide that support for each other. it's not possible if you're on your own. So we do repeat the NHS message. If you need medical help, do go and get it. And if in doubt, phone your GP or NHS 111. So, Julie, I do know what you did at the weekend, really, because of course I was here. But do you want to talk about the film we saw?
Well, we saw two quite interesting films at opposite ends of the spectrum. One was Jason and the Argonauts, excuse me, which was made in the early 60s and had stop motion animation on it, which was great. And I loved it, actually. I really, really enjoyed it. I must have seen it many years ago, but I couldn't recall it in any detail. So it was like watching it for the first time. And the second one was a Steven Spielberg film about virtual reality, a world of virtual reality, and it was absolutely the extreme in terms of filmmaking, but also in terms of content.
Is it Ready Player One?
That's it.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the name
It
of
was
it.
on one of the subscription channels, and I'm sure Josh, as our gaming expert, can tell us which one, or is it on more than one?
I think it's on Amazon.
Amazon, yeah.
It's certainly on one of them. I can't remember which one.
Well, I'd seen it advertised a few times and didn't fancy it, and I have to say exactly the same in bucket loads for Jason and the Argonauts. But Julie chose them, and they were both interesting films. I did do quite a lot of DIY still at the weekend, mostly through Jason and the Argonauts. But yes, I think that sort of sense of being able to kind of dress up to go out to stay in, as we say on Friday, but to have, we get the popcorn, we get the sweets, we get the drinks, we set it up like the cinema,
Yeah.
except it's much easier for
I
our.
mean, we I managed yesterday to acquire a film called Deep Blue Sea 3, because when Josh was far too young to watch
To have
it
watched it, yeah,
originally, he did watch Deep Blue Sea.
about 100 times.
And I do,
Love that film.
and I saw the film, and I thought I've got to get that for Josh, because then it'll be like it's a 2020 film, but I was sure he'd seen Deep Blue Sea 2, because I remember watching it, but apparently he didn't. So anyway, we watched Deep Blue Sea 2 last night. It's a 15, so just for anyone with younger children, it has plenty of entrails in it. Um, and but you know what? It's so throwaway. It's fun. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the thing about it.
It's not a good film, but it's not a bad film. It's not as good as the first one. If anyone thinks that the first film is not very good, I will happily argue that point with you, because I love the first one. And yeah, the second one's not great, but it's good fun.
There is
It's like an hour and a half.
There's some good CGI in
Yeah,
it.
there is some good effects in it.
I don't recall that I've seen any of them, but if anybody wants to have a kind of virtual argument about these films with Josh, he's volunteered. So just contact us at info
Got nothing else to do.
2012.org.uk. I shall put that up on the screen now because it's also useful for other purposes. We had quite a busy day yesterday, didn't we? Because Tim Boddy, who we also managed to interview last week, was doing a virtual photo shoot. And that was a really interesting experience because what he's been commissioned to do is produce, I think it's either 10 or 12 portraits for a guide to queer London that's coming up. I think it's going to be published in the spring. And the author is Arlim Karaj. Not entirely sure I've spelt that right, but I think pronounced that right, but I think so. I can spell it. You'll be pleased to know. So he's been doing socially distanced portraits, and that really wasn't possible for me because even if I'd sat on my doorstep, because my doorstep is less than 2 meters from the street, I would have been sitting there, he would have been on the pavement the other side of the road, and all these people without masks would have been coming and going in the middle. So we decided what we would do is Julie would act as his eyes and hands. So we had a long day moving lights around, taking photographs. He was looking at pictures and then changing the settings remotely. It was also a very interesting way to work because, of course, working with all sorts of people with different access needs, lots of people we work with do use personal assistants. And it was a really good way to kind of say, if somebody couldn't take their own photograph for an impairment related reason, we could use these same techniques. So we practiced on Tim. I mean, I think it's fair to say you're completely shattered as the photographer, whereas fortunately I was posing.
I think it's a useful way of working because if the social distancing and the lockdowns and all those sort of things carry on over the winter, it's a nice way of sharing skills with other people via Zoom. And I think it's quite informative in that respect. It was also quite a relief to have Tim take ultimate responsibility for the final shot, I must confess.
Yes, I think one aspect of taking photographs is always hunting through the hundreds and hundreds afterwards and then doing all sorts of kind of, tiny bits of fiddling with them in the processing stage. So, yes, we were delighted to hand those over. I was sending them over in batches of 50 via WeTransfer. And Julie said, "What do you think of them?" And I said, "I hadn't looked." So at that point, I didn't actually think to look. But effectively, it is a portrait of me operating the live stream. Not this live stream, it has a different background. So it would, I look up and you can't see it, but we have all sorts of rainbow flags and also black and silver striped curtains, which I do some of my performance stuff with and my LGBTQI plus stuff with. So it's that background. And the camera was literally in a fly on the wall position in a place a human being couldn't otherwise get. So it was certainly the most unusual shoot I've ever done with a photographer, because Julie's documented my work for many years and she's worked as my technician with self portraits. And I've worked, particularly back in the noughties, I did a lot of work with a photographer called Ashley, who, really does some very, very interesting portraits. So yes, it was the most unusual shoot that I'd ever been involved with. Like I say, we did find it a bit tiring, but not half as tiring as if we'd had to go over to a studio. So there was that. So that was our weekend, and that brings me on nicely to our app date. It's the first week that we're only running an update on a Monday, and the reason it's become a new Monday feature is for the last few weeks we've been reporting every show on the NHS COVID-19 app pilot in Newham. That pilot finished on Friday, and the new improved app is going out live to the nation on Thursday. I was privileged to have a talk this morning with two of the women who are at the top of the team. There's some changes you won't see. I think that was the first kind of message that I got. It was going to be renamed and now it isn't. So it will remain the NHS COVID-19 app. If you see in the press today articles about the test and trace app, that's what it would have been called had they changed the name. So that press stuff is a little bit out of date. Another aspect that they're working very hard on at the moment is the risk settings, because there's a little bit of confusion between what they say and what they mean. At the moment, it's a kind of, if your area is no worse than the rest of the country, it automatically comes out as low risk, but obviously that's not true at the moment. So, in response to the way the situation has changed, they're also looking at how to kind of redefine that aspect. But it will generally have the same 6 functions and critically, this very, very clever Bluetooth function. So, I think before we move on more generally to other types of app, let's play one of our what we call short auntie films. And that's not because auntie is short, but that's because it's a short version of our longer 7-minute film, which is called WhatsApp Auntie. WhatsApp Auntie is available on our website, and so are the 9 2-minute versions for social media. It's on a Creative Commons license, which means anybody can use it as long as they don't change it. And this is one of the short auntie videos that just looks at some of the privacy concerns that I know have been coming up in the press this morning.
What's up, Auntie?
What are you looking at?
The new NHS COVID-19 app, Auntie.
What's that?
It's a new way to fight coronavirus using our phones. It'll help everyone to protect each other and save lives.
Do you need to know your NHS number?
No, you don't need to enter any personal information into the app. I know your privacy and security is important to you, but the app won't affect that.
Will you help me to install the app now, please?
Yes, of course, Auntie. Support the app. Support the NHS. Save lives.
And that was one of our short aunties. I'm an auntie myself, so I rather enjoy the whole auntie thing. And that, of course, was our wonderful Sahira Khan. Sahira is an actor and TV presenter. She grew up in Newham and she lives very close now. So we've been really delighted to work with Sahira on that. You will have seen some of Sahira's film poems on this stream in the past, and you will continue to see Sahira's films in the future. We're hoping that these auntie films are now going to be used across the UK to explain to people, well, what's app with the app. So, does anybody have any comments, questions? I mean, unfortunately, more of the country are now in lockdown than they were on Friday, because you were already under special measures on Friday, weren't you? And now a number of areas in Wales have been added. So, if you're in Wales, welcome to the club.
Yeah, and I think the majority of the north of England as well now as well. So
Yes, I think more than 1 in 7 of the UK are now in additional measures. I think it was 1 in 10 about the middle of last week. I forget because it is going up. And there's still very much kind of in discussion about what extra is going to be happening in London. And that does look inevitable. I mean, I think if it was down to the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, we would probably already have had additional measures put into place. But it does seem a little bit, I don't know, it's a bit of a mixed message from the mayor's office, because if you want everybody to go into central London and then you're concerned about infection rates rising, I do think you have to take some responsibility for that yourself. But nonetheless, Julie, did you have any latest thoughts on the NHS COVID-19 app?
Yeah, I saw an article briefly. I haven't read it in full detail. Excuse me, indicating that there's a trial program using pendants in a very similar way to the app that I think it's Hong Kong or Singapore. People have been issued with these pendants which electronically can check into places and check into other other people using the apps. I think in a very similar way to the app development in this country.
No, I'm really glad you asked that question, and that's genuine. I promise that we didn't practice that beforehand. What's happening in countries like that is the thing is working in a completely different way. Your data is being kept, and it's being kept centrally, and that's what those pendants do. They monitor you, they track you. It's almost like wearing one of those bracelets, that you have when you come out of prison on parole. Whereas not that kind of bracelet. Whereas the NHS COVID-19 app, as it said in the film, you don't enter any personal data, no personal data. Nobody knows anything. All of the information stays on your phone. Where you've been stays on your phone. Who you've been in contact with stays on your phone. And it's your phone that will tell your contacts in the same way that the venue that you've been into will tell your phone if they're in special measures. This is all about phones communicating with each other and not the government. There have been some very strange stories, I think, in the media over the weekend where people are still concerned that somehow they're going to be tracked if they download this app. And it is nonsense. However, if you're concerned about digital privacy, then I would very strongly recommend, and it's the kind of thing we will continue to discuss. Very often, when you go onto a new website, it asks you to accept cookies. And those cookies, little bits of software, very often report back every single thing you do, how long you spend on the computer, what programs you spend time on, and so on and so forth. I always make it a habit to say no. And then usually what will happen is they will offer you an option where everything other than the essential cookies is turned off. And if you go save and exit on that, they can't track your data. So I think most people are having lots of their own data already tracked, not by the government, but by all sorts of private companies who then sell that data on as well. But the NHS COVID-19 app is very much designed to be anonymous and private. And I think that's one of its huge advantages, because Google and Apple have had to come together to write new code for their phones to enable all of this. We talked about the latest OS 14 update for the iPhones on Friday and how that contributes. It's a really big effort, and part of that effort has been the anonymity, because Google and Apple quite rightly said they simply wouldn't cooperate with something where your data could be tracked. So I think the sophistication of being able to run your Bluetooth in the background, taking just a tiny bit of power and a tiny bit of data, and to do all those things with it, I think it's not world beating, because across the world this is being rolled out, apart from in places where they're just desperate to monitor their citizens. But it certainly is world class, and that's really all we ask.
And I think what is apparent is that there is the need to boost public confidence or public belief in both the anonymity of the app, but also in how effective it's going to be. And we've talked a lot about how it will work, what the bonuses are, its effectiveness in getting to many more people than many of the other things are, but that's not yet what's being publicly put out there. And I think that those bits of information are absolutely essential to make people go, well, okay, nobody's going to know who I am or where I was, but it will tell me if I was near somebody else. And it's got that kind of, it can do that for this amount of time, and it can simply tell you if you went to Pizza Hut on Tuesday last week, somebody who had also been there was subsequently tested positive, then you can go, oh, cool. And there's kind of like very human versions of it, rather than it being about statistics, and mega data and this, that, and the next thing. I think actually bringing it right down to that kind of personal level would be really important.
Yes, I think there's been a lot of very negative media which has been undeserved, because, as I understand it, the original Isle of Wight trial was very successful. Lots and lots of residents took it. They liked it. Unfortunately, where it fell down was it wasn't based on this Google Apple model, which was itself only just being developed at the time. So the Bluetooth didn't work. But as an app, it was extremely popular. So I'm disappointed, if you like, by some of the mischief making. I saw something in one of the broadsheets at the weekend that said, oh, it's got to have 80% of people using it or it's useless. Well, that's not true at all. even 5%, if 1 in 20 smartphone users used it, it would already make a difference. But if 1 in 5 used it, then on its own, it would be more effective than if the test and trace system wasn't running at all. If you take the test and trace system and the app, that's what the test and trace system needs to kind of deal with the demand. And as we speak, they are looking at doing even more sophisticated things with the app, which should help relieve the pressure on test and trace even more. Yeah, I think that let's see it before you have all this sort of negative media stories, because we all want to get back to whatever a real new normal looks like, and certainly by next year. So we want people to be using this app. I think anybody who knows me knows that I will always speak up. So I'm promoting it because it's a good thing to promote. I'm saying I'm impressed with it because I'm impressed. And every single thing we can tell the NHS about how to tweak it to make it more inclusive and accessible, trust me, we have been taking that right to the top and been assured that we've been listened to. So we'll say this again on Wednesday, but without a full length app date. But if you've got a smartphone, make sure your operating system's up to date. Get ready for Thursday. Go onto the App Store. It's very, very quick and easy to download. It takes up almost no space. It runs on almost no data and no power. What's not to like? So I would really appreciate it if you would do that. Does anybody have more dreadful puns for me? Well, you can tell it's Monday, can't you? So in that case, I'm just going to put on a short video to tell you more about our Join In From Home programme. Together 2012 is running a Join In From Home programme from our website, together2012.org.uk. Click on the link at the top of the page, Join In From Home, to go straight to the main page where you have a wide range of accessible, inclusive creative activities, mostly using things that you would already have at home. At the top of the page and throughout the pages, you will also see videos in British Sign Language to translate the site for deaf people. These videos can also be useful if you have difficulties reading and you simply want to hear more of the content. The Join In From Home programme is based on the activities that we would usually be running in East London. Dance Club usually meets on the fourth Monday of each month, and they create improvised masked dance for the screen. Here you can also see their very first film, where they simply made masks from paper plates, covered themselves with fabric, and just moved gently to the music. You can hear as well, there's an improvised soundtrack. So we're suggesting that you make a mask out of anything you can think of. It could be a cardboard box, a paper bag, a paper plate, as in here. Video yourself dancing in it and then share the video with us. We will show it on screen and we will also enter it into the dance programme of our film festival, which we run every December. If you're temporarily or permanently chair-based, there's also a warm-up you can do here created by our associate wheelchair dance company Folk in Motion, and that focuses on relaxing your upper body and improving your breathing. The Photographers and Filmmakers Club usually meets on the second Monday of each month. We're inviting you to make a video at home with the theme of home and share it with us. You can use a phone or a camera, make any kind of film you wish, including drama, documentary, dance, animation, artist films, comedy, and they'll be eligible for a CAT award at our December Film Festival. You can also watch with us from home. In addition to Together 2012 TV with Together Unlocked and other live streams, we have the Together Disability Film Festival highlights. Each year we run the International Together Disability Film Festival in Stratford, bringing together a wide range of films by disabled filmmakers, as well as films about disability issues and disabled people. We always publish the programmes online with links to the films that are freely available. So we invite you to revisit our recent film festivals from the comfort of your own home, and also to send us reviews of those films. And finally, you can sit back, relax, and enjoy videos of past live performances, artist talks, and creative workshops that we've produced in the past here. So, for example, from past festivals, we have documentation and films of creative dance workshops, street art performances, dances that the dance club have created, dance performances, and of course, we're continuing to add new activities on a regular basis. So that's our Join In From Home programme, although we will have some news soon about restarting some of these clubs on Zoom. And the reason we're doing that is because although we know that many people don't have a great deal of digital access, in this digital year, we're very conscious that it's now becoming essential. So what we're doing as a East London based organisation is we're working locally with the council, but we're also working nationally with the NHS to look at these issues of digital inclusion and really push that people need access, not just to data, not just to smartphones or tablets, but also the training, which of course is rather more difficult these days because it's a bit chicken and egg, isn't it? But there are nonetheless some amazing organisations locally that have got loads of experience, have been doing this all through lockdown. So, what we want to do is encourage you to spend more time online and improve your digital skills by joining in our clubs online. So, there'll be some announcements later. We will, of course, continue to indeed put new activities onto the website, but there will also be more opportunities to join in live. And now I'm delighted to say it's time for Julie Newman's interview with Tim Body. And I just emphasize the surname because when I was putting it onto the website this morning, you say at the end, "Thank you, Tim Body." And I thought Bodie's a lovely name, but in fact, his name is Body. So this is Julie Newman interviewing Tim Body about some very decidedly non-digital photographs. And we're going to put up this video, but also a book and another link that he's recommended, so that if you want to do this at home, you will be able to do so.
My name is Tim Body. I am a photographer and photojournalist based in East London, and I'm a recent graduate of London College of Communications Masters in Photojournalism and Documentary Photography, which I finished just before the pandemic. So good timing in that respects. And yeah, I undertook a project called COVID-19 Plant Sprints. It's kind of self-explanatory in a way is the title. And over lockdown, I, like many other people in the country, were feeling, quite isolated. I had like extra time in my hands as kind of my freelance work, my photography work had fallen off the cliff. And when I was at university the year before, I undertook a project which was based around the process called antitypes, which is a method of producing prints where you kind of use botanical goods, so vegetable juice extract, plants. And yeah, it's kind of a very experimental brand of photographic process, I guess, and it's not often used. And so yeah, when kind of lockdown took place, it's something I always wanted to revisit and like almost have an excuse to really go to town on this process. And so I started to make a few as like on my hour-long government-sanctioned daily walk. I kind of really explored my surroundings in a way that I had never done before, because I felt like I needed to take these walks just to get outside, and then I'll go to like new parts of Bow or slightly further afield if I was feeling particularly energetic. And then yeah, I started on these walks collecting plant matter and sort of really kind of investigating my surroundings. So that was kind of a really fun part of this process. And then I would bring back kind of a leaf or kind of an outline of a plant that I would use for the silhouette for the print. And for the emulsion side of the print, so just to explain, like you need some kind of plant juice as long as your paint. So from my local independent shop or what I had in the fridge, I would kind of take vegetables. So for example, I'll use spinach as my example, as it's a particularly good one to get a print out of. You take your spinach, excuse me, put it in a mortar and pestle, then, crush it up until it kind of forms like this pulpy kind of mush thing. And then you strain it through coffee filter or muslin cloth. And so you can just left with kind of essentially spinach juice, like in the bottom of your bowl. And then you kind of paint with that. So get like a soft brush and paint it on. I was painting it onto paper, leave it to dry, maybe do a coat or two. And then that's when I'll take the plant matter that I had sourced on my walk. So I was picking up plant matter from Tower Hamlet Cemetery near me, from Mile End Park, Victoria Park, Olympic Park. Very blessed to be in a relatively green part of London, I suppose. And yeah, I'll place this plant matter on top of my paper, then put that in a frameless picture frame. And then to get your print, this paper with the vegetable juice on it needs to react with UV rays from the sun. So then I move it back into my backyard. And then when the sun came round during the front, I'll move the print to the front yard. It's not really a yard, it's just like a tiny window space. So for that 2 months, I constantly had these frames sticking out, like on window frames, and people would walk by and kind of look very strangely. I mean, it's like, what is that chap doing with these strange colored plants in the window? And yeah, it takes between, I would say, a day and 3 or 4 weeks to produce a print that actually works. It depends on essentially how much UV rays lands on the print. So at the height of summer, they can develop really quickly. And I found as I got to sort of late June, I was able to do some prints in half a day, whereas some were particularly stubborn, and it took 3 weeks to actually, for the UV rays to kind of react with the color on the paper. Like I think red cabbage was particularly annoying one to do. And some of them were worth all the hassle, and like, unpeel it from the frame 3 weeks later. It's like, yes, it worked. But sometimes it would just be utter disappointment. It's like, oh, 3 weeks for that? That was, a waste of everyone's time there. But yeah, I guess that's the process side of things. And in terms of the benefits to myself, it was great to have something to focus on that wasn't kind of looking at my phone, looking at a screen. Because obviously it was like quite a terrifying time of like being bombarded with news alerts, being stuck on social media, looking at like the death rate and just the existential chaos of the outside world. So for me, it was a way of channeling that energy into something creative and very hands-on, kind of very tangible, kind of using my hands, being covered in plant juice on like my t-shirt or apron or whatever I was wearing. And yeah, I guess, yeah, quite wholesome is a word that I might use. Sorry, I talk quite a lot there. I kind of get carried away when I get involved.
It's really interesting. I'm wondering, what determines when you open the frame up to see the results of ultraviolet rays?
That's a good question, because there's not like an exact science to it. It's not like something you can really, it's very measurable, I suppose. So what I normally do is when I put the print out, I might take just a quick snap on my mobile phone or something. So I can see what it looks like as soon as I put it out. And then I can use it as a reference point to see how much the color has changed in the print. So if it's like very deep purple or pink on my phone, and then I'll go out like 2 days later and it's like faded to like a very off pink, or sometimes if it's reacted particularly well, the background might almost be white because it's just the reaction has been that good. And so yeah, I kind of found myself just referencing my phone quite a lot. But it's also a question of taste as well, because sometimes like quite a subtle print can be quite nice, or sometimes like a really dramatic, really punchy, this is bright pink silhouette and here's like a bright white background can also be like a viable option. So yeah, it's just yeah, a question of taste sometimes too.
That makes a lot of sense. I noticed when I went through the prints online, you seem to have picked up some very interesting plants. How did you do the research? Did you already know what the plants were, or did you have to do additional reading?
I would say a little of both. So particularly at the start, I was my knowledge of plants around me, and particularly weeds, it was okay. And of course, I'd done some research on the previous project, but I found I was just picking stuff that kind of looked quite pretty, or kind of had a nice silhouette, or had an interesting shape, or there was plenty of them. I was also careful in what I was picking. I didn't want to sort of be too destructive at the same time and pick parts of nature that shouldn't be picked necessarily. But as time went on, I did a lot more research, and I have a few like quite old books, and it was kind of fun going through those and trying to work out what the prints are. And some of these books had kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of about the mythology almost of certain plants, and certain stories from folklore as well. So I kind of researched a lot on that, which is particularly interesting. And I was trying to think of a way to work it into the project in a more direct manner. But I didn't want to overcomplicate things so much. But by the end of the project, and I kind of at some stage did some backwards research. So once I had all my 147 prints, I then kind of researched the ones that I didn't know so much about. And that part was also fun. That was kind of part of the learning experience. And again, going into this idea of having a focus on something and not just, looking at the TV or whatever it might be, or on social media. So that was also fun. Like, just learning.
So did the publicity pick up all of your prints, or was it just a selected number?
Just a selected number. So on my website, I think I have 15 prints. They were a good representation of the project overall in terms of the color, variety of prints, and also the time that they were made. So I made them for essentially the first 100 days of lockdown. And so I think those prints kind of span that time. Like the first one is, I think, day 1 or 2, and then the last one is like day 90 odd. So it was nice to have like almost this timeline and a documentation of that time for me. So with each print, I can sort of remember what I was doing and perhaps what I was feeling at that time. Often despair, but it's still a memory in my mind. Sorry, what could you repeat the question? There was something.
Just wondering about who chose the prints that were used. And did you actually get a chance to author that yourself, or was it somebody else who chose those 15?
I chose those 15. They're essentially the ones, that are the heart of the project. Though I made 147 in total. I kind of got a bit carried away. Some of those, like 147, are just not very good. So some of them are kind of repeats of others, so that they don't feel very necessary for the project. And I also sold, I think, 15 or 20 to friends or family or people that happen to know that I make these kind of things. Not for a lot of money, just a little bit of income. And I gave 10% to the outside projects as well, who do fabulous work. And in terms of the ones that kind of made the BBC article, I kind of sent them 15 images, and I think they used 12 to 14 in the end. I'm not actually sure, but they kind of had control over the images for the article that were included there.
What was the impact of having that publicity?
It was that day. It was particularly overwhelming in many senses. It was obviously very positive. I got a lot of very nice feedback from people. Just people that I don't know at all getting in touch and saying how much they enjoyed the prints and how and also how touched they were by them as well, which I was really surprised to hear. It kind of really seemed to strike a nerve with some people out there, which is great to hear, and people that kind of understood this aspect of dealing, I guess, with mental health and anxiety, and having something to channel your energy in a creative fashion, I suppose. It was a bit of a whirlwind hurricane day with like lots of people getting in touch, and I'm still kind of I have a list of people I still need to respond to, but it's only so many hours in the day. It was all positive though.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I imagine it's quite useful to have that now on your portfolio, isn't it? That you've had that exposure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not that I have a CV as such, but I guess in terms of portfolio and CV stuff, it is like very useful to say that this project has been published on a major platform, which is fantastic. And I know it's one of those things that a lot of photographers or creatives kind of aspire to, which was really interesting. It really broadens your audience as well, rather than talking to my social media, which is diverse to an extent. I guess it's mostly kind of younger creators that are on there. So it's great to kind of break through that into kind of the real world, for once of a better phrase. So it was kind of nothing like I've quite had before in terms of having that exposure.
And just finally, I'm quite interested that you talked about documentation, and I believe that documentation is absolutely critical, especially as a photographer, filmmaker. But I'm just wondering, have you got any intention to continue with this documentation, and perhaps would you do something with it in the future?
That is a big fat maybe, I would say, at the moment. I'm not quite sure how I want to approach it. Like, I definitely needed a break after that kind of day 100, as it made sense in terms of how much I put into it, because I spent like a lot of time over those 2.5 months, like nearly every day I was doing something antitype based. So I kind of needed that physical break from it, but also like a mental break, like a period of reflection to see what I had created and to see what might make sense moving forward. If I return to it, possibly, yeah, absolutely, maybe. Particularly if this idea of kind of a lockdown 2 seems a lot more closer now, a lot more real. And I guess if that happens, then maybe it could be, the more I think about it, I think conceptually it would be interesting to document that second stage of lockdown, if you like, and it will also be something fun for myself to do. Although there might be a challenge over winter, it's a really bad time to create antitypes, as they take so long to develop. But perhaps that could be part of the documentation. That could be add to it in a weird kind of way.
And also, I mean, you were talking about the history, the mythology, the folklore. I mean, that's another aspect which potentially could be very, very interesting and supporting the project overall.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's something I feel like I would just, even from a personal level, like to learn more about. And a lot of this folklore and history is kind of quite seasonal based as well. So, for example, if I start picking plants in October or leaves, there'll be different ones to pick and different stories to tell. So that could absolutely be an extra angle to it. Sorry, these questions are really interesting. They're making me think about where it could go.
I think it's watch this space, Tim Bodie. Thank you very much indeed, for allowing us to ask you questions about your really very lovely project.
And thank you, Julie, for that interview. I do apologise to visually impaired viewers. I should have audio described it at the start. Most of that film was the images of Tim's work, which were just beautiful to look at and reflect. In shades of either green or pink, they consist of outlines of different pieces of grasses, leaves, flowers, anything else I can think of. And those outlines are darker against a lighter background. So you might have a dark pink silhouette with a lighter pink background, or a dark green and a light background. Mostly the pictures, the colour was in a sort of oblong behind, but in the very last one, Tim had used a brush and had done a circle. So, and we put them on the film in the order that Tim made them. So you did see them from the beginning to the end over that sort of 100 days of lockdown. Cool. So thank you again, Tim. That was great. You will find our highlights and links page under the menu for Together Unlocked TV on our website, www.together2012.org.uk. We will put that interview up there, but also with the links to the book, the website, and Tim's website. So if you're interested in having a go at this, and I certainly am, then check it out. If you've got friends who are not digital friends, do take the time to share this technique with them if you think they'd be interested, because it is a completely non-digital thing to do. We're actually racing towards the end of today's show, so from me it just remains to say, on Wednesday we have the Pop-Up Poetry Club and also poetry from others. We have our Clockwork Paralympics, our virtual nature watch, where an assistance dog shows us the outside world. This week, Merlot, on holiday in Norfolk, has sent us yet another lovely piece of slow TV to enjoy. And also, of course, the opportunity to see Merlot himself. We also have Josh on sport and gaming. So apart from that, it's a goodbye from me. When we've all said our goodbyes, you will be relaxing with Awa.
Bye bye. Thank you for joining us today.
Yep. See you on Wednesday.
See ya.
Now it's time for the meditation. Now you can either lay down or sit up, whatever is relaxing for you. During the time, I will be talking to you, but you don't have to do anything, just relax. Okay, we are going to start with a deep in and out. One not out, in and out. Imagine that you are in the ocean. You are in the ocean. You feel at peace with yourself, and you feel very happy. And you are lying back in the ocean. You're just lying back. And the water is calm, warm, nice and warm. And you're not thinking about anything other than your breathing. So you're laying there thinking about nothing. Then you go for a spin. You're laying in the sea of happiness, and you're not thinking about anything other than yourself. You're floating, you're floating. And then you turn to an island. There's no one on this island than yourself. You sit on this island. You're not thinking about anything. And then it started to rain very heavily, but you're not afraid. You like the rain. You leave it in the sun. You sit in top of the tree and you watch the wave coming towards you and out. Roll and out. And you feel at peace with yourself. Remember this picture, because whenever you are feeling sad, whenever you are feeling worried about anything, just go to your special place and you feel at peace with nature. See, sometimes life is hard, but you will defeat it. And if listening,